You finally sit down. The notifications are cleared. The tasks are paused. The door is closed. For a brief moment, the world loosens its grip on you, and yet your body does not follow. Your jaw remains tight. Your shoulders hover slightly raised, as if waiting for impact. Your mind begins to scroll through unfinished responsibilities like a reflex. It searches for something to fix, something to optimize, something to anticipate. Rest is supposed to feel like relief, so why does it feel like exposure? There is a peculiar vulnerability in doing nothing. When you are busy, you are protected by motion. Productivity becomes armor. Achievement becomes proof. Effort becomes evidence that you are worthy of the space you occupy. But when you stop moving, there is nothing to point to. No visible contribution. No measurable output. Or just you, breathing and existing. And for some people, that feels unbearably uncertain. Stillness removes distraction, and without distraction, old sensations rise to the surface. Thoughts you outran during the day begin to echo in the quiet. Doubts you silenced with activity begin to whisper. You tell yourself you are just being responsible, that the guilt is motivation, that high standards are a virtue. But if it were only about discipline, your body would not react this way. Notice the subtle urgency that appears the moment you try to relax. The impulse to check something, to prepare something, to improve something, as if pausing might cause everything to fall apart. Where did that fear come from? Somewhere along the way, your system learned that stillness was not neutral. It carried consequences. Maybe when you slowed down, someone criticized you. Maybe when you relaxed, you were told you were wasting time. Maybe being idle meant being overlooked. Children are perceptive. They observe what earns approval and what earns tension. If attention arrived when you performed, and distance arrived when you rested, your nervous system made a quiet conclusion. Movement equals safety. Stillness equals risk. So even now, as an adult with autonomy, your body reacts to rest as if it is dangerous territory. It is not dramatic. It is subtle. A flicker of unease, a tightening in the chest, a restless thought that says, do something useful. This is not weakness. It is adaptation. You adapted to survive environments where worth felt conditional. You adapted to remain visible. You adapted to stay connected. But adaptation has momentum, and momentum does not stop just because circumstances change. So you keep moving even when no one is asking you to, even when your body is tired, even when your mind longs for quiet. And the most confusing part is that you may not even recognize it as fear. You call it ambition. You call it drive. You call it responsibility. Yet beneath those names, there is a simple question that surfaces in the quiet. If I stop producing, who am I? Stillness brings you face to face with yourself, without achievements as evidence. It strips away roles and tasks and leaves you alone with identity. For someone whose identity formed around usefulness, that confrontation can feel destabilizing. Because usefulness is measurable, presence is not. And so the guilt rushes in to rescue you from that uncertainty. It hands you a task. And it offers you something to fix. It restores familiar ground. Better to feel busy than to feel undefined. But what if the discomfort is not proof that rest is wrong? What if it is simply proof that you have rarely been allowed to experience it without consequence? When stillness feels unsafe, it is not because you are incapable of relaxing. It is because relaxation once carried a cost. And your body remembers. There is a memory that does not feel like a memory. It feels like a rule, a quiet rule that shaped the way you move through the world. You may not remember the exact moment it formed, but you live by it every day. The rule says you are valuable when you contribute. You are lovable when you achieve. You are safe when you perform. Perhaps praise arrived when you brought home good grades. But perhaps attention followed when you were helpful and mature beyond your years. Perhaps the household felt calmer when you were productive and less burdensome. No one needed to say it directly. Children are fluent in emotional patterns. They notice what earns warmth and what earns withdrawal. They sense what keeps the environment stable. So you adapted. You became responsible, capable, efficient. You learned to anticipate needs before they were spoken. You discovered that usefulness reduced tension, that excellence created approval, that being impressive made you visible, and slowly worth became conditional. It was not announced like a contract. It was absorbed like air. If you are the reliable one, you do not get to collapse. If you are the strong one, you do not get to rest. If you are the achiever, you do not get to fall behind. And rest then begins to feel like breaking character, like stepping out of the role that kept you connected. And connection once meant safety. The child version of you did not choose this consciously. The child simply did what was necessary to belong, to reduce chaos, to maintain closeness. Performance became protection. But protection becomes identity when it is repeated long enough. As years pass, the role hardens. You are known as the productive one, the disciplined one, the dependable one. And you begin to believe that if you stop embodying this version of yourself, something essential will disappear. Respect, relevance, love. So even when no one is actively demanding perfection from you, the internal demand remains. Because the original fear was not about tasks. It was about attachment. If I am not useful, will I still matter? And that question does not always form in words. It forms in sensations, in the discomfort of idle time, in the anxiety that creeps in when you are not optimizing something, in the guilt that surfaces when you choose rest over productivity. The adult mind may understand that love should not be earned, but the body remembers otherwise. It remembers the times approval felt earned. It remembers the subtle pride in being exceptional. It remembers how being needed felt like proof of significance. And so you continue the pattern long after the original environment has changed. You strive, you improve, you achieve. Not only for success, but for reassurance. Reassurance that you are still worthy of space, still worthy of care, still worthy of belonging. When worth becomes conditional, rest feels dangerous because it interrupts the earning. It pauses the proof. It removes the visible signs that say, I deserve to be here. But what if the rule was never absolute truth? What if it was simply a survival strategy, crafted by a younger nervous system doing its best? Conditional worth feels permanent because it formed early. Yet it is not identity, it is adaptation, and adaptation can be unlearned. The human body is not designed only for effort, it is designed for rhythm, expansion and contraction, alertness and release, movement and recovery. But when effort becomes constant, the rhythm is interrupted. The system adapts to urgency as if it were normal. Stress becomes familiar, tension becomes baseline. Busyness becomes identity, and stillness begins to feel foreign. If your days have been filled with responsibility, deadlines, expectation, and pressure, your nervous system learns to live in a state of activation. It becomes efficient at scanning for what needs attention. It anticipates problems before they arise. It remains slightly on guard, even in quiet moments. This is not a character flaw. It is biological intelligence. The body adjusts to what is repeated. When urgency is repeated long enough, calm can feel uncomfortable. When stimulation is constant, silence can feel loud. You finally pause, and instead of relief, you feel agitation. Your heart may slow, but your thoughts speed up. Unfinished conversations replay. Future scenarios unfold. Old memories surface without invitation. The absence of external demands creates space. And in that space, your mind fills the gap with vigilance. Why does this happen? Because the nervous system confuses familiarity with safety. If you have spent years in motion, motion feels secure. If you have spent years proving yourself, striving feels stabilizing. Rest removes the familiar signals. There are no tasks to complete, no problems to solve, no immediate evidence of usefulness. And without those markers, the system asks a quiet question. Is it safe to stop? For someone whose identity has fused with productivity, stopping can feel like stepping off solid ground. Achievement provided structure. Responsibility provided direction. Busyness provided distraction from deeper feelings. When all of that falls silent, you are left alone with your internal landscape. And if that landscape has been avoided through constant doing, stillness can feel overwhelming. This is why some people feel restless on vacation, why weekends feel strangely anxious, why sitting without a plan creates subtle panic. The body has not practiced ease, it has practiced endurance. Endurance is powerful, but it is not the same as regulation. True regulation allows activation and deactivation. It allows effort and restoration. But if restoration was rarely modeled or rarely safe, your system may not recognize it as permission. It recognizes it as vulnerability. So the guilt emerges again, not as moral judgment, but as physiological habit. It pushes you back toward activity because activity is known territory. Known territory feels safer than the unknown, even if the unknown is simply peace. The nervous system that forgot how to stop is not broken. It is loyal. Loyal to the environments that shaped it. Loyal to the patterns that once ensured survival. But loyalty to the past can quietly rob you of the present. And learning to rest is not about forcing calm. It is about gently teaching the body that stillness no longer carries danger. That the absence of motion does not mean the absence of worth. That you can exist without proving anything in this moment. During rest, a voice appears. It does not raise its volume. It does not announce itself as harmful. It sounds practical, logical, responsible. It says you could be using this time better. It reminds you of others who are working harder. It suggests that improvement never pauses. At first, the voice feels helpful. It frames guilt as ambition. It disguises anxiety as discipline. It convinces you that pressure is necessary for growth. But listen closely, and something more fragile is hiding beneath it. The inner critic was not born cruel. It formed as protection. At some point in your life, striving reduced the risk of rejection. Perfection lowered the chance of criticism. High performance created predictability. So the mind developed a watchful guardian. A voice that scans for flaws before others can find them. A voice that pushes you to do more so you will not be caught unprepared. In environments where mistakes carried emotional consequences, self-criticism felt safer than external judgment. It is easier to attack yourself first than to risk being attacked by someone else. And so, the critic rehearses worst-case scenarios. It compares. It calculates. It insists that rest equals regression. Culture amplifies this whisper. Productivity is praised. Exhaustion is romanticized. Constant improvement is framed as virtue. Social comparison is endless and curated. In such an environment, the critic feels justified. It points to evidence everywhere. Look how much others are accomplishing. Look how quickly time is passing. Look how far you still have to go. But the critic rarely asks a different question. What is driving this urgency? Beneath the demand for more is often fear of not being enough. fear of being ordinary, fear of losing relevance, fear of disappointing those whose approval once felt essential. The critic believes it is motivating you toward safety. It does not realize that constant pressure erodes peace. It does not understand that worth cannot be secured through endless output. When you attempt to rest, the critic senses vulnerability. Without activity, there is space for evaluation. Without distraction, there is room for doubt. So it intervenes. It offers you tasks. Here it lists improvements. It reminds you of unfinished goals. Better to stay in motion than to confront uncertainty. Yet the irony is quiet and profound. The voice that claims to protect your value is the same voice that questions it. It keeps you striving, so you never have to test whether you are enough without effort. It keeps you running, so you never have to stand still long enough to discover that nothing catastrophic happens when you do. The inner critic's whisper is persistent because it was rehearsed for years. It became fluent in your vulnerabilities. But a whisper is not a verdict. It is an echo of old environments where excellence felt like insurance. And as you begin to notice it, without obeying it, something subtle shifts. The voice may continue to speak, but it no longer defines the truth of who you are. A guilt is rarely the deepest emotion in the room. It is often a curtain, a thin layer stretched across something more ancient and more tender. When you feel guilty for resting, it seems straightforward on the surface. You should be doing more. You could be improving something. You are wasting time. But if you sit with the feeling a little longer, another presence begins to emerge. Fear. Not loud fear. Not dramatic fear. A quiet, almost invisible fear that asks what happens if you stop. What happens if you are no longer exceptional? What happens if you are no longer needed? For some, the fear is irrelevance. The world moves quickly. Standards rise constantly. If you pause, will you fall behind? If you slow down, will someone else take your place? For others, the fear is abandonment. If usefulness once secured connection, then rest threatens that security. If you are not contributing, will you still be valued? If you are not strong, will you still be loved? And for many, the fear is shame, a deep internalized belief that being ordinary is dangerous, that existing without achievement is not enough. Shame does not shout. It hums beneath awareness. It tells you that you must justify your space, that rest is indulgent, that ease must be earned. So guilt becomes the safer emotion. It is easier to feel guilty than to feel insignificant, easier to push yourself than to confront the possibility that your worth feels fragile. Busyness becomes a shield. Achievement becomes a distraction from the deeper wound. As long as you are striving, you do not have to sit with the question of inherent value. And as long as you are producing, you can postpone the fear of being unseen. But shields are heavy. Constant striving extracts a quiet cost. The body grows tense. The mind grows tired. The heart grows distant from simple joy. You begin to measure days by output instead of presence. You begin to measure yourself by comparison instead of compassion. When rest feels threatening, it is rarely about laziness. It is about identity protection. The guilt says, get up and do something. The fear underneath whispers, if you do not, you might not matter. Yet there is a truth that fear struggles to accept. Worth is not maintained through motion. It is not strengthened by exhaustion. It is not secured by endless proof. The need to earn your existence was learned. It was not born with you. And beneath the layers of guilt and fear, there is something softer waiting to be acknowledged. A longing to exist without calculation. A longing to be valued without performance. A longing to sit still and discover that nothing essential disappears. There comes a moment that does not look dramatic from the outside. Nothing collapses. No announcement is made. It is simply a quiet noticing. You are resting, and the familiar guilt appears. The whisper begins its usual script. You should be doing more. You are falling behind. This is wasted time. But instead of immediately obeying it, something different happens. You pause and observe it. You realize the voice sounds older than the present moment. It feels rehearsed, predictable, almost automatic. And for the first time, you question whether it is telling the truth or simply repeating a pattern. Recognition is subtle but powerful. It creates a small distance between you and the guilt. You begin to see that the discomfort is not proof of laziness. It is evidence of conditioning. The unease does not mean rest is wrong. It means rest is unfamiliar. You start to notice how quickly your body tenses when you stop, how your mind searches for tasks to restore its sense of control. Instead of judging this reaction, you become curious about it. When did I learn this? Who taught me that stillness is unsafe? Why does productivity feel like protection? Curiosity softens what shame once hardened. You realize that the guilt is not an enemy. It is a message from a younger part of you that once believed constant effort was necessary for security. That younger part does not yet know that circumstances have changed. And it does not know that your worth is not under threat in this quiet room. As recognition deepens, you begin to experiment gently. You allow yourself to remain still a few moments longer than usual. You notice the anxiety rise and fall like a wave. You discover that discomfort is temporary, that nothing catastrophic happens when you choose not to move. The world continues. Your relationships remain intact. Your identity does not dissolve. This is not rebellion against ambition. It is awareness of compulsion. You can still care about growth without punishing yourself for pausing. You can still value effort without equating it with existence. Recognition is the turning point because it breaks the illusion that guilt is authority. It shows you that feelings can be observed without being obeyed. It reveals that rest is not a moral failure but a human rhythm. And in that quiet understanding, something inside you begins to loosen. There is a quiet shift that happens after recognition. It is not loud or triumphant. It is gentle, almost fragile. You begin to experiment with the idea that you do not have to justify every moment of your existence. At first, this feels unnatural, like walking without armor in a world that once required protection. You sit in stillness, and the old impulse to prove yourself flickers. But now there is awareness. You can see the impulse without immediately surrendering to it. You begin to notice the difference between movement, driven by fear, and movement, driven by intention. Fear feels urgent, tight, pressured. Intention feels steady, chosen, calm. This distinction changes everything. You realize that much of your productivity was not pure passion, but protection. Not inspiration, but insulation from deeper doubts. To exist without earning feels like stepping into open space. There are no achievements to hide behind, no performance to point at as evidence of worth. There is only presence, breathing, being. At first, presence feels exposed. The mind asks, "What have you done today that proves your value?" But gradually the question loses intensity. You begin to see that value is not a daily transaction. It is not something that resets to zero each morning. It does not evaporate when you rest. Nature offers a quiet metaphor. A river does not rush to prove it is flowing correctly. A tree does not strain to justify its growth. Seasons do not apologize for winter. They move through cycles without shame. And effort and restoration coexist. Expansion and retreat belong to the same rhythm. Humans forget this rhythm when identity fuses with output, but the body remembers how to regulate when given permission. You start to experience small moments of rest without immediate guilt. You notice that stillness can feel spacious rather than threatening, that silence can feel nourishing rather than accusatory. The world does not collapse when you pause. Your relevance does not disappear. Something unexpected emerges in these moments. Clarity. When you are not driven by constant urgency, you can hear your authentic desires more clearly. You can distinguish between goals that energize you and goals that merely protect you. Learning to exist without earning is not about abandoning ambition. It is about untangling ambition from self-worth. And it is about allowing yourself to be human rather than a continuous performance. Over time, the nervous system begins to trust that stillness is not danger. The inner critic softens its volume. The guilt visits less frequently. And when it does, you recognize it as an echo rather than a command. You begin to understand that your existence does not require constant proof. Presence itself carries quiet legitimacy. Strength is often described as endurance, the ability to push past limits, to wake up early, to work late, to carry more than seems reasonable without complaint. The world applauds those who never stop, those who sacrifice rest in the name of success, those who equate exhaustion with dedication. But there is another kind of strength that receives far less recognition. The strength to pause without shame, and the strength to sit in stillness without scrambling to justify it. The strength to believe that your worth does not rise and fall with your output. For someone who has lived in constant motion, choosing rest can feel like stepping against a powerful current. It requires confronting old fears. It requires tolerating the discomfort of doing nothing visible. It requires trusting that your value is not fragile. This kind of strength is quieter. It does not seek applause. It does not announce itself on schedules or achievement boards. It reveals itself in small private moments, in the decision to close the laptop without guilt, in the willingness to let an afternoon remain unoptimized, in the courage to exist without performance. When you begin to see rest as resilience rather than weakness, something profound shifts. You understand that a system constantly pushed to its edge cannot sustain clarity or compassion. You realize that restoration is not indulgence, but intelligence. That cycles of effort and recovery are not signs of inadequacy, but signs of life. The guilt that once felt like truth begins to look like habit. The fear that once felt urgent begins to soften. You recognize that you were never meant to earn your existence through endless labor. You were meant to experience it, to participate in it, to move and to pause, to strive and to settle. If parts of this reflection felt familiar, it is because this pattern is more common than it appears. Many people carry this quiet guilt. Many measure themselves by productivity and silently question their value in moments of rest. You are not alone in this, and you are not broken for feeling it. And if this video made you feel seen, or if something quiet inside you was touched, know that this space exists for reflections like these. A place where the hidden corners of the human heart are explored with gentleness rather than judgment. If you would like to stay connected, you are welcome here. And if you feel comfortable sharing your experience, your words may help someone else realize they are not alone either. Take care of yourself. You deserve gentleness.